Welcome to Conversations for Our Time, podcast number 7 with the Quiet Sun team, myself, George, and John. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking and discussing the off-grid lifestyle, things to consider and what it could be potentially like. Off-grid lifestyle is ideal, the way forward to transitioning perhaps into a new system based on a network, possibly with other communities, stepping away from relying on the centralised government and also the possible potential problems that can arrive in a community of your own. And I'm going to be discussing all that. So how you doing, John?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, George. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about off-grid, because I think, even
the term
off-grid is a little bit, I think, a little bit misleading, in a technical way, it means off the national grid, right? Not connected to the electricity, gas, water, etc. But obviously, we all know that terms are just kind of brandished around and they don't really have their meaning. But I think really the important thing is about
natural living.
Yeah, what is that? What is off-grid? Because really, off-grid means you opt out of this particular society because, and as we'll discuss, this isn't a natural way to live.
Yeah, not this.
Many of the aspects in our society, are artificial. The schools are artificial, and I mean in their learning. There's not a synchronicity with nature, which is not only just important for understanding that the world we live in isn't a real reality, right? But until you kind of embrace the idea of, that these things are possible before you start doing the research and you look back into history, it's really difficult to understand what off-grid means, and I think for many people, maybe people that aren't attracted to off-grid, but for many people it's scary because they're like, I'm going to lose everything I've got. But many people I speak to aren't satisfied. They're invested in the system, even if they earn lots of money. And everyone's different, but the point is, really just about this off-grid thing is like, how do we encapsulate what that actually means? Because it's not about going off-grid. What it's about is creating a new society, you don't even want to call it a system because system is so bloody artificial, but a new balance of life, one where we all respect each other and we're able to, kind of embrace each other's differences and yet, feel secure in our own identity. But the thing that links us all is that we're all human, or we're all life. We all want to be happy. We all have particular, needs and wants. But most of them are really basic. It's just that we've complicated what those things actually mean. So, having a roof over your head has turned into who's got the biggest house on the street.
It's what we were talking about the other day. It's like, people were like, what are you doing with your life? What do you do for a living? What kind of job have you got?
Well, exactly. This is what I get sick of those questions. In fact, there was someone who asked me this question yesterday, and I said, I do whatever I need to. He said, what do you do for a living? I said, I do whatever I need to do. Because even just saying I'm an electrician already restricts your life. It restricts you from what you're actually able to achieve, and also your perspective on the world. And there's so many powerful things, George, we know with language and even the thoughts we have each day. These things all reinforce what we've already been taught, right? And even the words we use, I said this to you yesterday, like in our subconscious mind, right? Has all sorts of implications. So I think the important thing is just to not be, in this off-grid lifestyle, is to not have any fear, because what we're trying to promote is about people having a quality, fulfillment, good relationships. They feel secure and safe, not because of the police or the politicians or the government or whatever, because they feel secure within themselves, because they have people around them, a community of people that all want the same thing.
We can create our own security. We can create our own safety. At the end of the day, people just want to be free and happy. It's a dream of mine, and people like me and you, John, are hoping to achieve this kind of lifestyle one day. But there are many factors to consider, and it's not always going to be bed of roses. It really isn't. Remember, this is like a completely different way of life that we're used to, and not one that be easy for many people to do. There are many obstacles in the way. One, obviously, being money. Many people have children and grandchildren, and they can't really leave them behind. People don't have. They just don't have the money available to do it, or people don't know where to start. So there's a lot to consider there.
I think there is, and the important thing, I think, is just the excuse is just that you've been told that you can't do it because you've got kids, because you've got too much to lose, right? And of course, there's an element of practicality. But when you actually strip everything back to its bare essentials, we all have the capacity to do amazing things. And yet, most of us, including myself, tell myself that I can't do certain things, right? Or I think, it's not worth it. It's never going to happen. But again, language, what are you telling yourself? Able to just be who we are. And I don't believe in man-made law, but I do believe in the laws of nature and the laws of the universe and whatever you want to refer it to. But the Ten Commandments, even if you believe in the New Testament or whatever it comes from, but the Ten Commandments were just based on natural law. It was about treating people with respect, treating people equally. The same as the Buddha said, and all religions at their start would have said the same thing. The only thing that's corrupted it is because, when your mind's not nurtured from a young age, or however it's nurtured, that's going to be a predominant way of thinking. You're influenced by every input, especially when we're young, right? And even our belief of what we believe to be true or possible is usually defined by our parents or the education system, right? So every mind has a potential to do amazing things, and yet we put all these things in a way to restrict it. And all we're trying to get across to people is that it starts with you. Everything starts with you. Everything starts with me. Some people say, you can't change the world, but that's not actually true, because the laws of physics say that when something has an action, there is a reaction. Now, there's an immediate reaction, but there's also a delayed reaction, and it could manifest anywhere at any time. We don't know what that will be. We can study natural, I'm going to use the word systems because I can't think of a better one, but we can study these natural ways and we see cycles, and the same things happen in our mind, right? But if you look at, for instance, a diseased bit of land, right? When you spray pesticides and stuff on land, you destroy all the biology, which means you destroy all the health of that land. we do exactly the same. The pesticide is information and the land is our mind, right? When you're spraying toxic information into your mind, how the hell are you going to be the healthiest possible version of you? It's impossible.
Absolutely.
So this is about nurturing ourselves, nurturing other people, and trying to overcome.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And ultimately, the people are going to be people are going to have their own obstacles into achieving this life, but it's not something new to humans. Like so many civilizations in the past achieved this and were self-sufficient and were thriving, like the Aztecs, the Khmer Empire, the Incas, but also a lot of these civilizations disappeared. This could possibly be because of the real climate change. This is what we think. It's always been a bit of a mystery, really, what happened to a lot of these civilizations, but the real climate change seems to be the missing puzzle to it all, our sun.
I think it's an interesting point, actually. I think what happened to those civilizations is exactly what's happening to us. But what I'm saying is this connection to the universe goes far beyond what most people would ever imagine. And I firmly believe that there is a connection, because there can't not be a connection, because everything's connected to everything. So even if you take it from a scientific level, the sun has a magnetic field, the earth has a magnetic field, human beings have a magnetic field. When things change, how does it influence us? And how much of an influence are we having on each other, right? Everything is a feedback if you look at any particular situation. So, the climate is really important because it's the biggest model that we can study. But Buddhism always teaches you that the macrocosm is the microcosm and the microcosm is the macrocosm, which means everything that's happening on a grand scale, a galactic scale, is also happening on a molecular scale.
As above, so below.
And that also applies to ourselves, our life force, right? Because everything is about energy if you strip everything down.
So if we input our energy into the right way, I think more people than they actually realise can achieve this kind of lifestyle, even if 100%. They had the money.
100%. And I think also, people can achieve it, but it's very difficult to do on your own.
So let's guide people into doing it, because some people might want to do it, might not have a clue where to start. I mean, there is so much to consider. The first thing I would suggest to anyone to do is to read up about it, watch YouTube videos, volunteer at an off-grid community, get a taste of it and see how it is. See if you could live that kind of way, that kind of lifestyle, away from the city, away from the things that are easily accessible to you, like pubs, the cinema, takeaway services, and away from people. I know I can live without all that. I mean, you can live a more of a quiet life, but will it be too quiet for people? We've got to think about what it will be like on a long-term basis. I think everyone I know who knows me, if I had the money, I would have done it yesterday. But these are all things to consider, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. I think not the important thing, but something to consider is that we all really basically have the same needs. And it doesn't mean that we can't be individuals, it's just that humans have the same needs, same as animals have the same needs, right? Comfort,
food,
reassurance, food, shelter, all these things. But as I've told, a few people, the only security lies within yourself. And I think, what we believe we're heading into, people aren't going to have a choice. Well, they might have a choice, but everyone has a choice. But ultimately, one thing I thought, so when I went travelling, this was like 10 years ago, but I basically stayed on this island. It was a community, and it was pretty much off-grid. They were pretty self-sufficient. They caught all their own fish. But they didn't have any technology, and neither did I. And, you know, back then, that was 10 years ago, you know, before smartphones really became popular, but I just remember feeling free because I was just with the people I was with. You know, obviously I miss my family and friends and stuff, but so if people were to go off grid, you know, I suggest the first thing to do before you even go and volunteer at community is go out for the day without your phone.
See how many people can live without that bloody phone.
In the woods without a phone, because it would be a test of what it actually feels like, who they really... Going off grid and getting off grid is first about the mental battle. You can't go off grid unless you're prepared, or unless you realise fundamentally that what's important to you, what's really important to you at the end of the day, who means the most to you, or what means the most to you, because you can go off grid with those people. You can live a natural way. We don't even have to bring down all the towns, right? You can still live naturally in a house. You can put systems in a house, capturing grey water, just planting food in your garden. There's all sorts of different ways that you can live more wholesomely. Or just saying to your kids, look, no computer games tonight, no nothing. Let's just sit down as a family and connect.
Play a board game or something. But I mean, ultimately, that's why I always say start small, you know, don't overwhelm yourself.
This is it, man.
But even if people had the money, the next thing I would say is to think about is the location because of GSM and the weather, or what country you are already in. We've got to think about the restrictions for flying, etc., or any kind of restrictions. I mean, we thought about Portugal, didn't we?
Yeah, location is important. I mean, if we're you know, referring to what's going to happen in the next couple of years, if nobody has noticed already, you know, the weather in the UK is getting more unpredictable, like it is over the whole planet, right? And these things are really important to consider when you're looking to go and live on a bit of land, live off the land. You know, so it's about doing your research. You know, you can pretty much survive anywhere. However, there are key things like staying out of cities. Cities are going to be the first, just like they, you know, lived their heyday. They are an exaggerated version, like a concentrated version of what happens everywhere else, right? Things are always more intense in a city, yeah? So as this thing unfolds, cities are going to become not a good place to live. So there's a few things you need to consider about location or getting land. Water source, natural water source. You need to have really ideally some kind of elevation. You need to have some kind of wood source. So they would be, you know, the key components. And obviously you've got to like it, but you've got to be in a place where you're able to access the sun, you're able to access natural resources, and you are, you know, in a place that is, it depends again what you want, but if you really want to be safe and secure, you want to be as far away from a city as possible.
You want to be in the middle.
You want to be 20 miles, 30 miles away from the city, and ideally you want to be, you know, 5 miles away from the nearest town.
Even if we could go to Portugal. Even if we could, forget about the flying restrictions. Well, we wouldn't do that anymore. We wouldn't do Portugal anymore.
Well, the issue is, you know, when you're going to a new country, you know what it's like to travel. I mean, people speak English, but if anyone's ever been to a non-English speaking country, or a country, you know, where you go to a town where they don't speak that much English, communicating can be a little bit of a challenge, right? That's just one thing that you have to overcome. The laws, the customs, and especially in today's world, what will the law enforcement and governments of that country think about foreign nationals? Do you have the same legal right as that resident in that country? Because remember, if you go to a country and they lock it down, right, and you don't know the Portuguese law, anything could happen. You could be put in prison, anything could happen. So that is just one of the things that I considered, because I had the opportunity to go to Portugal, and someone I kind of met online, we got chatting, really cool guy, on our wavelength, and he bought a bit of land and he wanted someone to help him, you know. And I was ready to go down there. But, you know, I did my research, and Portugal's beautiful, the land's cheap, but since this whole COVID lockdown, you know, whatever you want to call it, some of the stuff coming out of Portugal is pretty, you know, here in the UK, I feel trapped, but I also feel safe because I've studied the law, and, you know, there's certain things you can do here to protect yourself. You know, neither of us have worn a mask, and I won't be taking the vaccine. Just like it's so important to kind of choose your location carefully, and if you're going to go abroad, you need to do your proper research.
Well, talk about the history of the GSM and Essex. I think we're all right actually in Essex.
Well, you know, it depends on where you go. You can go back to the Little Ice Age, and you can find accounts of the Thames freezing over, etc., etc. But Essex has got a microclimate. The only issue is we can look at previous solar minimums, grand solar minimums, like the Maunda and the Dalton and the Spora, but we only have limited information on what actually happened. Obviously, you've got, you know, a few hundred years of temperature checks from central England, which is great, so we can see. But those microclimates, you don't necessarily know how things fluctuate. You might get a temperature change, but you don't know if there's fierce snowstorms. If we don't know how it affects us in Essex, but we do know that from information and proxy data and things like that, when you have something like a full-blown glacial event, we know that in the past that the glaciers got down to around Barnet in North London. So fortunately, where we are, we would have escaped, but still, you don't know. You don't know how many feet of snow you're going to have, how easy it is to grow food. However, you know, there's so many limitations, man. You know, the trouble is with the southwest, that's just going to get so wet and windy. They're just going to have floods all the time. Over the coming years, they'll just be flooded out. However, there might be some places in Devon, Cornwall, Hampshire, etc., Dorset, that are microclimates themselves, so they may escape it. Again, it depends on how you prepare. You can adapt. If you have, say, 20 more inches of rain a year, you put your house on stilts and you build permaculture systems which collect that water, or they put it somewhere else. You know, there's always ways around it, but wherever you're going to choose to live, you just need to understand the historical climate of that area, because it will give you an idea of the kind of things that you may have to adapt to, right?
Absolutely. It's not just thinking about where what you want to live in, depending on what money you have. Do you want a house? Do you want camper vans? Do you want cabins? Do you want teepees? Any natural earth homes? Do you want to build these? If so, what building materials would be best? Do you want polytunnels, greenhouses, dome house? We've got to think about it all.
Yeah, there's so much to think about, George. It can be overwhelming if you think about it too much. Look, really the critical thing is about connecting with other people. Yeah, because even the skills we've learned in this modern world, we each have a skill that we're going to be able to contribute to a community, and this is the important thing, is that if you actually start chatting to people and saying, no, what do you want to be part of the community? If so, what are you prepared to do? What can you bring it? And you build, because the success of a community is fundamentally based on the trust between those people, the trust and respect. It's got nothing to do with the skill set, experience, or anything like that. Because if you don't get on with someone, or you're not prepared to change or adapt or compromise, we've been taught to be so individualistic in this society, right? But we need to be communicating and confiding in each other and supporting each other and trying to help each other learn. But a lot of this is, it always comes back to the ego, man. Like, what are you willing to do to survive? That's what it comes down to. Now, to prepare. And me, myself, I still indulge a little bit. But I kind of need that little bit of indulgence to have that break, because it can be really overwhelming preparing.
Oh, it is totally.
So there is so much to think about, all these things. I think you can break it down into different areas, and there's many manuals and books that you can look at learning particular skills. But I think growing food is obviously central. Having protection is essential. Having some way to trade is also really important. Being able to build new things, be creative, to be able to, so most of us think, well, what about hot water? Well, what are we going to do when we've got no gas and we can't get hot water? You can basically make a hot water system out of a 210 litre oil barrel and a thing called a rocket stove. And the rocket stove is something which is a really efficient way of burning small bits of wood which create a lot of heat. That heats up the water and it feeds a shower system. All you need is little bits of wood, little bits of kindling, which you can get from your land if you've got stuff where you can harvest.
Absolutely.
If you've got like an acre worth of woodland, this isn't necessary, but this is where the communication comes in. Because if someone else has got wood that they can give you and you can grow them some food, fantastic. And with that exchange, you're not just exchanging goods, you're exchanging trust and respect. You build up a relationship.
And you're showing you can work together,
Exactly.
So we've got, obviously, like we mentioned before, another podcast, energy supply, water supply, solar panels, solar power, whilst we still can, hydroelectricity generators, or some people don't have any electric anyway, that's the way they want to live. But if we can obviously use electricity, then great. But as you said as well, you pointed out the food supply, working out what you can grow, what you can preserve. I'm not an advocate of using animals for milk and meat, but other people might want to do it. If you do, Anita Bailey's book, Cold Times, really explains in detail about off-grid living and food supply, and a whole lot of other things in that book. What we also need to think about is protecting yourself. You mentioned security, right? Your land and trying to set up some form of security system. I'm only just using system for now. We have to be realistic, okay? I hate talking this way, but we have to do. We have to be, like, depending on where you live, your life could be in danger from certain types of animals and people. I don't want to harm anyone. I'm not that kind of person, but in the colder times to come, where food is more scarce, looking at history, people will do anything for food. I'd want to protect myself. There could be some crazy times ahead when it comes to civil unrest. I mean, we have to be honest about that.
Yeah, 100%. Again, I think the real protection comes with the people you surround yourself with. That really is the first port of call, because really our protection is about using our wisdom, right? About what we need to do in a particular, if you're not prepared in even a little way, if you prepared even a little way, you've got the habitual mentality to be able to know what you need to do. Because when a crisis comes, it's those who are calm that are able to get through that crisis.
Because panic will lead another person to panic.
Exactly. So having some kind of formal network around you is really important, and being practical about, if shit hits the fan and you're in a place
who are you going to trust
that could get dangerous, you need an exit plan. You need a safe house to go to, all that kind of stuff. If you're already on your land, it's a slightly different story. I mean, security systems, really, you need to position your land in a place that's either very difficult to see, or you have a good view of people coming from miles around.
When I say security system, I'm not, just for the listeners, I'm not saying some sort of alarm system. I'm talking about something that
because when the solar flare comes,
exactly,
alarm systems aren't going to mean nothing.
It's not going to be.
Even to the point, I was having a dream the other night, right? You don't need to even use that. All you need is simple things like bits of string that let off bells. But the other thing is get some dogs. Get some really strong hunting dogs who have been bred not to fight, but to protect. You need dogs that are going to see off not just the animals that try and come in, living off grid. I don't know whether I'll eat animals, but I'll certainly have animals on the land because they're essential for fertilisation, etc., etc. So you've got to protect what you've got and yourselves. And I think, having guns and things like that are great, right? If you live in America. I mean, you can still get a license in this country. But how much attention is that going to attract?
Well, you might have to.
Because but you're better off with things like crossbows, catapults. Well, of course. But that's something, that's something that will come in time. We don't necessarily know what kind of weapons people have, but you've got to think. You're going to have certain threats. Your threats are going to be from people that just stumble upon where you are, and they're starving, been driven insane, whatever. There are going to be organised groups of people that want to take over communities.
As history shows.
They will probably they're not going to be as apparent. It depends on whether the grid goes down. If the grid goes down, i.e. we get a solar flare, and so this is the difference between back then and now, is people are less capable because we live in a digital world, and therefore we're less connected to reality, we're less connected to nature. How many people know what they can pick in a forest to eat or to use from material sources? I mean, we're just learning, but at least we're learning about you're always learning in these types of things. But that really, and the other thing if they are still here, you know, government, private organisations, you know, we don't know how far this could possibly go, but we do know that they're doing a lot of land grabbing. So you've also got to consider that. You've got to consider things like drones.
They're not going to make it easy for us.
But you can still, it's just about...
It's still possible.
You know, for me, it's about, you know, I'm going to find the best place I can be. And if anyone tries to take it away from me...
You've got to fight.
Then, unfortunately, they'll see my side that I've never actually shown anyone, that I've never even shown myself, but I know that I'm capable of. And if it has to become, like, you know, whatever you want to, you know, describe it as, but I'm prepared to welcome people into my community if they respect everyone. Yeah, if I had some people that come by that were starving, I would probably help them if there was a couple of them, you know? And I'm hoping that other people would as well, but we just don't know. However, you know, if anyone official tries to come to this place and tries to take it away from us, then you have to be prepared to do anything.
You have to.
Unfortunately.
And this kind of life, as we said before, it's never going to be easy. It's never going to be straightforward. There will be, without any doubt, conflicts. I think, at the beginning, certain rules will need to be laid out if it's a community thing. Not like government style, but it depends on whose land it is, who paid for it. I mean, I wouldn't start dictating what someone else should do with their own land. I would never dream of doing that, and I hope people wouldn't do that with me. Yeah. But, you know, you will get these kinds of people. It's important to lay out some rules and make sure people don't cross the line.
Yeah. I mean, it's about, you know, I think we just, again, strip it back, man.
Do no harm to others.
Do no harm to others. Cause no loss. You know, what's the point of stealing something when you can just borrow it off someone?
Exactly.
You know, because the only reason people steal it is because community is broken down. Because if, you know, back in the day when people didn't have, okay, I'm not saying that people didn't steal stuff back then, but if you're taught to just be nice to people, and everyone's taught that, people will just lend stuff to each other.
Absolutely.
I mean, but the point is it's, you know, people have it in them just to be nice. It's only the situation, the very small places that we've been crammed into. Because if you look back in history, most crime occurs within cities or cramped places under squalid conditions, right? Where people aren't getting what they need, you know? So I think the important thing is that, you know,
it's important to have everyone to be on the same page and have a good understanding.
Exactly. So
right.
Those rules are important, but it's about, you know, most people that want to go off grid, they want to go off grid because they want a better life.
And to be free.
And to be free. And to be around people, you know, some want to be on their own, but most want to be around people that feel the same as them, not necessarily think the same, but they feel about the world in the same way. You know, they've dug through all the bullshit that society has created, and they've realised that actually the most important thing is our connection with the land, and that actually enhances our connection with each other, because we learn a lot from just observing a bee, you know, go and pollinate a plant, man. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. And, you know, they now know that bees can sense if a plant's been pollinated or not.
They're amazing little creatures.
It's wonderful. You know, but all creatures have that amazingness, including us. And that's the important thing to remember is we think we're separate. You know, a naturalist is, you know, someone who is able to understand that everything is connected and we are part of the same system. And when you start to grow food in a natural way, or just create any cycle in a natural way and study it, you become part of that cycle because you learn that human beings are just as important as every other thing, but no more important.
Absolutely.
You know, the reason we're able to do what we do is because we've been given, by whatever, the responsibility to look after the planet. That's what I believe. I mean, some people believe different things, and maybe my view will change on new information. But we all have the capacity to do that, and that's what we need to do.
And the whole thing with transitioning into this way of life, we also have to think about people's mental status, emotions, what they can physically contribute, and perhaps spiritually. It would be great if in the community there was a counsellor of some sort, someone who could do spiritual events, meditation, yoga, basic Tai Chi, anything like that for mental, emotional and spiritual balance. Spiritual balance, I think, is going to be key. It can't be just all work and no balance.
Definitely not, George. Yeah, all those things, man, but they're all linked, aren't they? Your mental health, your spiritual enlightenment journey, whatever you want to call it, you know, your physical health, your emotional health, they're all interlinked. And I think the problem is when you term things spiritual, or, you know, some people get put off, but it's just about connection, including all the things that are telling us that we can't do something. I know the way we live is not healthy. It's just not natural.
It's just not natural.
So we just have to, you know, remember that, you know, it's okay to be scared and it's okay to be afraid of change, because most of us aren't really used to it on a grand scale. But I ask myself this question, you know, if I don't do this today, what's down the road in 2 years? You know, how prepared am I? This is the issue, is it? Because it all comes down to self-belief, self-esteem, our idea of identity. If we identify with fucking reality TV and pop stars, whatever they call them now, instead of identifying with reality and, you know, beautiful music, they're different, because beautiful music's been made to make people feel a particular way. Yeah, we have to be bold and don't lie to ourselves. Be honest with ourselves.
Absolutely.
That's where we start, and that's where we can then just be like, we can do this, because I actually know a mechanic down the road, or I know a lawyer, or I know all these different people that can help create something new.
I think also, yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, so also physically, you'd want to think about what kind of jobs people will do, what they are capable of doing, what they can contribute to. Ideally, you want people who can build things, as in harder times where they could be so bad that structures and buildings get awfully damaged. So you build things, don't you, John? Yeah,
100%. I mean, everyone has a purpose. Like, you know, even people who are old, right? You know, okay, they might not be able to do the same kind of physical labour that other people can do. But if you pick people that, old people, you know, I know older people who are very open-minded, and they can teach you a lot about things, about life, right? I think you need a balance with some older people, some younger people, you know, different ages. But the most important thing is that, you know, anyone can learn anything, right? Me and Joe could teach you how to build something. I mean, I'm just fucking a handyman. But Joe's like a trained carpenter, right? And you can teach each other stuff. As long as the person you're teaching is willing and wanting to learn, they actually want to learn. That's the important thing. If we want to learn something, we can learn pretty much everything. And if the teacher wants to teach, they will find a way to teach anybody. And that's the truth, because everybody can learn stuff. It's just some people see the world in a different way, so they need to be taught in a slightly different way. And so you do need the practicality of people who can build, people who can heal, people who can just listen to people if they've got problems, people who can teach, people who know a little bit about science. You need people who know about animals. You need to have people who are really strong. You need to have people who are fast. You need to have people who, are funny. You need to have musicians because you need to have some kind of culture, right? You need to have artists. Pretty much everything that exists in society is still useful. It's just how you use those things. Art is about bringing out real emotion. So the point is, we need these things, but they all need to come from the heart. It's like in preserving life. You wouldn't have what we're having today.
So I think there will always be jobs there, even if one is not physically able, or perhaps not in their youth. Maybe they could. There'll be always jobs like mill the grains, perhaps make the bread, do some cooking, repairing clothes, that sort of things. There will always be jobs like that. Obviously, thinking about general chores, watering plants, gardening, cleaning, washing, that sort of thing. It's not easy.
It's not easy,
but you can also
most
rotate
people
that
do these types of things already. When you go off grid, you're not going to be using toxic chemicals to clean. You're going to be making your own stuff to clean, right? And when you make your own stuff to clean, it becomes a lot more fun.
Exactly.
It's the same as like making grain, man. You get to provide bread for people by turning that grain into flour. Apart, because everyone, when you sit down and you eat, you're like, oh, thanks, whoever, to Tom who ground the grain, and thanks to whoever who went, to go and harvest it, whatever. When you sit down, this is another thing, you sit down as a community at night and you eat dinner together. Every single person sits down and you have dinner together. And that's your time to talk about what happened during the day, what you thought was cool, funny moments, all these things. That's what a community is about. And this way, as I said before, man, everyone can learn. I love soil, but I'm willing to learn about anything because I just want to contribute and make the thing work and, have good people around me. And so I think the first thing is just take the first step like we did. We're much further on than we were last year.
Absolutely. We're constantly learning.
We're growing food, we're making compost, we're looking at
different ways of preserving.
Different ways of preserving, but we're also looking at starting a business. And that business isn't about earning money. It's about earning a bit of money, but more importantly, trying to promote this idea of localism, right? Is to actually find out, form these connections in your local community so you can start building your community. And then when you've got those connections and you're learning from each other, you can pick your destination. And then when you pick your destination, you can prepare about what you need to do and all that kind of stuff. But it's all about the first step, George. That's the most important thing. And it's easy to think about it. It's not that hard to take that first step. You just need to have someone else who's like, go on, mate, let's do it together. You know what I mean? But you also need, and this is the important thing, George, on this journey that we're going to go forward within the next year or so, things are going to get difficult. So we need that community to start building now, because what that will do is when we're feeling down and we're feeling doubtful and we're feeling hopeless, other people that we're trying to build this community with can help to pick us up, and they can tell us that actually it's all right to feel like that.
Absolutely, I know. So there is going to be, obviously lots of jobs, and we can also
responsibility is like, yeah, man, I've got this responsibility. I am responsible for making sure that this happens, so everything else can happen. And everyone's happy. So
we're rotating the responsibility, and we're sharing out. Everyone learning and knowing about bushcraft skills, or teaching it to others, perhaps. So I'm sure there'll be, if you'll always find somebody that's more experienced in something else.
Yeah, man.
As we said before, setting up networks, connecting to other communities. This is how you beat the system. Having an electrician and a plumber will always be handy. Not that I'm trying to label it, but it will be great to have someone that knows this, has this kind of knowledge and skills within the community. Just various types of skills like that, and all will help make this community work, this kind of community work.
Definitely.
And certainly homeschooling, teaching children the things they need to know and not the crap they learn in school. Having a herbalist, fasting experiences, really thinking about the health aspects of things, and start living your life in a really, really, there's lots of us doing it, but living our lives healthily, but making a thing of it in this community lifestyle. That kind of stuff that I would like to contribute to as well. So there are lots of skills to learn, and me and you, John, we're just, as you said, we're at the beginning, but we've taken the time out in learning lots, not just the theory, but practically. We are learning a new way of life, remembering what our ancestors did, and it's in our DNA. These things, they take time, proper planning, unlearning, relearning, preparing. Adapting is the big word to all of this, and these are the things that's going to be key to our survival.
Yeah, 100%, George. Adaptation. It's really strange, isn't it? Because we all adapt every single day, and yet we kind of lost the essence of what adaptation is. And it's, I think, again, it comes back to language, man. We can respond to stuff, or we can react to stuff. And there's slightly, I think, in my mind, reaction is just something that is a built-in, innate kind of thing. So responding to things is so important, And I think as we push further forward, we need to just change our perspective. I think, that, again, what do we really want, George, out of life, man? What is the point of it?
I guess it just goes back to the old-fashioned freedom and happiness, and not trying to be controlled by these psychopaths.
This is it.
We don't want it.
But most of us don't even know that that's actually happening.
Oh, well, yeah, they're being fooled.
But that's the perspective, isn't it? Is that, it's like learning these skills, right? Oh, man, we're not going to need these skills, but who doesn't want to start a fire, man? Starting a fire is a cool thing. And when you can get a spark and a little flame, right, out of a bit of steel and a knife, it's an amazing feeling. It's like I was talking to my brother the other day, and he went blackberry picking. He was like, yeah, it was cool, man. They taste nice, but it was definitely something cool about picking your own fruit. Now, he doesn't necessarily know what that is, but what he does know is the feeling attached to it, because he just took the action. He was doing it with his kids, his boys. But I know the importance of that, and I said to him, I was thinking the other day, like 500 years ago, would someone have else been here picking from this blackberry bush? Because it's got a deeper meaning behind it, hasn't it? Is that actually these are natural things that we've done for millennia, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And really, it's just about getting ourselves back to our roots, man. All this stuff. But just to paint a picture of overall is, this world doesn't work. Our society doesn't work because otherwise it would be fair. But even in rich countries, there's still so much of an inequality. And people, how much money apparently is the UK worth? How many people can really say they're happy? How many people could say, well, if my house got took away and my car got took away and all my nice things, I'd still be happy? That's why I don't massively like money, even though it could be helpful. But I want to be capable myself. I want to be able to survive on hardly anything. Not because I think I deserve nothing, but that I know that all these things are just poison. The only asset I have is myself. So I'd rather spend my time trying to train my mind and train my body and prepare myself, even if this GSM stuff wasn't going to happen, which it is happening. That call to nature is still within. It's been within me for a long time, for many years. Same as you, George. And again, man, you know, we just need to have the courage, or just to take the action, you know, and don't be scared.
I think no, that's good advice. It definitely, people, you know, it's courage, and I do understand the obstacles that other people face into living this lifestyle.
Of course, man.
But yeah, no, I think that's a good time to end the podcast there. Some good final words there from you, John. I think I hope what we've talked about is helpful for people, giving them some idea where to start. We do understand that it's not easy. You know, I have no ties here, but you know, but other people do have ties. I have no ties. I have no money, but other people have ties, but they may have the money and they may be able to do it. But we do understand that it's not easy. Everybody's got their own obstacles, but we do hope this podcast has been helpful to people, to give them a starting point and all things to consider, like, you know, you are going to get conflicts. Where do you start, even if you have the money? What kind of buildings do you want to live in? We hope we give people some idea.
There's so much, man. There's so much material. I mean, really the best thing to do is buy books on preparing. Yeah? Buy books on how to build natural houses. Buy books on preserving food. Buy books on how to grow food. Buy books on, you know, how to make something from something else. Because if you observe the news, and this is my last point, but if you actually observe the news, and not the mainstream news, but the real news, where they're reporting on real events, you'll be able to see that our supply chain, our global supply chain, is slowly falling apart. And some of that's intentional, some of that's down to the climate. You know, they're compounding each other. But the point is, the way we lived and the accessibility to certain things, products, are going to become less and less. They're going to become more expensive. So at some point, people will be financially or inconveniently forced into looking for alternatives to those things. And that's the start, right? Because our ancestors, when something broke, they mended it. They didn't go out to the shop, or they didn't go, I've got a new one tomorrow, I've got a new one today. Because that teaches you that all the resources on the planet are limitless. And even though these people like fucking Jeff Bezos, thank you, he's, I'm saving the world, man. Yeah, look at me. I just donated all this money. And yet he creates more rubbish and shit than anyone on the fucking planet. It's complete hypocrisy.
It is hypocrisy.
And therefore, do you really want to be part of that? You know, don't get me wrong. I still buy some stuff from Amazon, but I do try and stay off it. I mean, I'm limited to money, but the point, you know, I'm trying to, every time I click something, I buy shit to prepare, right? And every time I buy something from him, because basically I'm going to use that to do exactly what I want. I know that he's game, and I know Bill Gates is game, and I know everyone's game. I know, World Economic Forum and what they're doing, Klaus Schwab. I understand them. So I know that, I can use what I need to use while it's still there. And that's really the advice I give to people is, while you've got the money, get everything you can that will last. Because next year...
It might not be here.
It might not be here, or it's going to cost twice the amount.
Exactly. Whatever that is. But
whatever that is, yeah. Apart from the cheap shit food that they're making, that's still going to stay the same, more or less. Because, it's just the premium food, the fresh vegetables, they're still there. in certain places, but we are having, decimation of crops through frost, rain, heat, wind, hail, volcanic bloody eruptions, all sorts of stuff is taking place. But also there's a propaganda program which is saying, food's running out, So I think the best way you can protect yourself is to create your own localized supply chain. And then you're not going to be stressed because you're just going to be thinking, oh man, I know where to get that, I know where to get this. And if I fall on this problem, the local farmer's more likely to help me out than Tesco's.
Absolutely. Well, I hope this is, as I say, I hope this is really helpful. We'll end it there, and we'll look forward to the next one, which we'll do real soon. So, great. Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep up the good work, Truth Warriors, and we'll catch you in the next one.